Sponsored by the Dún Laoghaire Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Business Eye, sponsored as usual by Dún Laoghaire Local Enterprise Office. And Joe, how are you?
Wonderful. I'm rolling around the house after consuming multiple delicious Easter eggs. I'm out walking again now. The weather is changing, so I'm doing those walks every day, getting that 5K in every day. So yeah, feeling good. Hopeful for the future. What about yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I getting the exercise in every day, and I'm hopeful too. It's interesting though. We had a guest recently, Ivor Cummins, and he was talking very frankly about things. And maybe something we could talk about today is, we're heading to. I think he posted online yesterday that Monday next week the UK is due to be at herd immunity level, and yet it's not fully opened. Right. And so there's all sorts of questions about where are we heading and where are governments going? And I guess that brings us back to businesses, which then segues back to our guest today, Charlie Boyle, around, customer service and the culture of businesses and how they're going to navigate their way through this.
Yeah, it's before we bring in Charlie, it's interesting. There's a lot of places out there who are closed and they're developing cobwebs in the premises, and they need to open up. And there's some people who are doing click and collect, and there's a sort of a mindset shift that people who are very eager to get back. What have we learned over the last 12 months about customer service? Because I've had some disasters myself. I've had some complete disasters with companies who were trying to learn and adapt, and then there's other companies that have just surprised us all and have flown through it. So I'm delighted to have Charlie on today.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so Charlie Boyle is our guest. Welcome, Charlie. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks, Simon. Joe.
It's great to see you. And so Charlie, for the listener, is a customer experience consultant. Well, I would say a guru, specializing in transforming businesses through customer service excellence. He's the CEO of Customer Service Excellence Ireland. He's also a facilitator and consultant with the likes of IMI, the Irish Management Institute, Enterprise Ireland, and you've had a lifetime career in, really managing and chaperoning customer service to perfection, to excellence. So, welcome, Charlie. It's great to talk with you. And given we've gone through these really challenging times, everybody's more sensitive, everybody is more cynical, and I think, and I'm not an expert, but I would imagine good customer service is going to be ever more highly prized. What do you think, Charlie?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks for the introduction. I think we're all experts at customer service, to be honest. I maybe am an observer of it, and there's something that I have a huge interest in. But I think we're all customers, so therefore we're all experts. Where you decide to spend your money is going to be based on values that you have, etc. And what has COVID done? It's focused, as it has done with so many other things. It's focused our attention in areas that perhaps needed focusing, and around that whole area of customer service, which is possibly the customer service where the two humans connect, and the customer experience is much greater than that. And I think what we're doing is we're talking more about the greater experience. So customer experience is normally the term we're using more often. And we're clearly in the middle of the experience economy, and that's something that is perhaps not as topical as it should be. Pine and Gilmore in 1999 said we are now entering the experience economy, the fourth economy known to man. We're likely to be in it, they said, for about 2050. So here we are halfway through an experience economy where it's not just about the product at a certain price, it's about the overall experience. So the overall experience of going to a Taylor Swift concert at Croke Park is not just about the product, which is Taylor Swift music. It's about the ambience, the atmosphere, the food, the fireworks, the colour, and it's an overall experience. And that's no different from somebody going into a primary care healthcare clinic. There's an overall experience at play there. The outcome, the product might be a clinical assessment to see what's wrong with me, but there's so much to it. So, we've had a great opportunity, I think, in the last 14 months to look at it and to look at those companies. Joe spoke before there about having a few disasters. Yes, when the tide goes out, sometimes the bodies are exposed, and those who were weak going into a crisis like this will just not have the abilities to stick through it. We've seen casualties there as well. We've seen casualties that were predicted, such as Debenhams, and just not good enough. They weren't at the races. They did no innovation in either their service or their products, and within a few months they were under serious pressure. Then we've seen other companies absolutely thrive because they've been able to pivot, they've been able to be innovative, and then there's this great discussion around the three areas of the skills. We're seeing, I think I've read 5 future skills reports in the last 5 months. And I would say it was probably 5 years before that since I've seen a future skills report. And a future skills report is basically a sector or an industry looking at the skills needed for the future of their particular sector. And if you took the one that came out in Ireland, which came out in November of 2020, much of the information gathered before COVID suggested that the 3 areas of the future skills needed in retail were product knowledge. So if you worked in retail, let's say you worked in a fashion store or fast moving goods, you needed about 33% knowledge of the product. Now that's come down hugely because 30 years ago, you would have needed to have 70% plus knowledge of the product you were selling. But now you don't need so much. Why? Because the person is coming in the door with all the knowledge. The customer is coming in loaded with the knowledge. They can sit for 2 hours the night before on a device and find out about the product they're buying. So the person in the retail needs about 33%, no more, of their skills to be knowledge. The other 33% is digital IT skills. So more and more we're needing to be digitally aware. Things like click and collect, things like easy payment, things like being, social media savvy. So they are the other skills. And the last 33% are human skills. Now that's been challenged hugely in that 33% is not enough, that we need more human skills. But let's say, for example, that it's at 33%. If we then go into hospitality and we look at the future skills required in hospitality and tourism and throw that together, they would suggest that human skills is as high as 50%. So these human skills, soft skills, employability skills, essential skills that we continuously talk about, every single report, including a civil engineer report in the UK that I read recently, it suggested human skills 40%. So think of this: tunneling under the Thames, water, perhaps treatment plants being built, hydro schemes. You would think that's totally about the product, but here they're saying 40% of the skills you're going to need to work in that industry are human skills. The anomaly here, although these human skills are required, these soft skills are required, these essential skills are required, let's take the stats on it. In Ireland, something like 70% of our budget in education and training is spent on digital and IT skills. We are overtraining in digital and IT skills, without question. Where is the deficit? We're 23rd in Europe in how much we spend on our human skills, yet it is of the greatest importance to the employers. So it's uneven.
There's a balance there. Can I just jump in?
Huge imbalance, Joe, yeah.
Just want to jump in there. One of the things just where you said about the likes of Debenhams, before even COVID or 2020 came in, if you went into Debenhams, you'd walk around the store because there was no one there to actually serve you. And when lockdown came in and COVID came in 2020, I think it was a great excuse for a lot of companies that were suffering, and we're talking big chains that were suffering, that were able to go, look, this has given us a golden opportunity to get out of this. We projected to get out of this in 2-3 years down the road. This gives us the opportunities to get out now. That was the writing on the wall. So it was a release for them. looking then at the customer knowledge, I've always said in the past, you need to know 100% of product knowledge, but you'll only use 15% of it because you don't know what percentage the client will work on it. And that reminds me of the motor industry. People know more about a car than the car dealer when they go in, and that's now just an order-taking process on it. But then soft skills, you talk about soft skills, you talk about customer experience, communication, it's human connection is the big thing. So I'm just going to ask you, what do you define as soft skills for people that don't know what soft skills are that are listening to this?
Really good question, Joe. And it's funny, I had a conversation for about an hour and a half with somebody this morning about that. It depends where we are. And what I mean by that, soft skills in America might mean something totally different from soft skills here. So if we were, and Simon and I have had this conversation in recent weeks, if we were to ask our colleagues in America what their 10 soft skills were, and if we were to put down our 10 soft skills, possibly 5 of those soft skills may overlap, but we may have 5 soft skills that are totally different. And when we're talking about soft skills, the first thing I would say about the term soft skills is we need to find another term for that. Why? Because when we use the term soft skills, we think of soft, fluffy, easy, not important. Those things come to my head. Human skills, power skills, maybe power skills is a bit too much the other way. But, somebody that comes up with a good term on this should be well paid for that day's work, very soon. But, what would I see as soft skills? You might think this is a hard skill, but what I see the biggest deficit, and when I see, this is what Google told us, LinkedIn, Facebook a few years ago when we were creating an apprenticeship for sales in Ireland. Leadership is a soft skill that there's a deficit in, without question. So you might think, leadership is an important skill. Of course it's important, but that there's a gap there. Resilience. We are not exposing the generations that are coming up. The 3 emerging generations are not being exposed to the same that baby boomers, my generation, were. That does not mean we were at war continuously, but we built resilience because we were allowed the opportunity to build resilience in the playground. You had a scrap with somebody over a football match. You sorted it out, you got on with it. Sometimes now that's a principle involved. It could be child protection involved. Have we gone too far? Have we not allowed the youth to get involved in the natural building of resilience? Now, what employers are saying to us is if you put them into a sales position after 3-4 years of a degree course, they have the theory of everything, but they haven't the practicalities of not getting a sale in that first 2 or 3 weeks. They haven't practiced resilience because the education system does not allow them to do that. It talks about marketing, it talks about sales on a theoretical basis. So the model has to be something like an apprenticeship where it's work-based, where the young lad is put in to sell. He's not selling, I'm giving up, then he learns back in the classroom what resilience is. Now, if we go on, communication is also a soft skill that there are gaps in. And it's the easy thing, Joe, is to blame the students. But we created the system that doesn't allow communication to be practiced at that level. Another one might be emotional intelligence, awareness of myself as a person. Awareness that I'm a shaper, I'm a coordinator, but I'm not a completer finisher. So self-awareness, all of those areas are soft skills. But if we had to list them out, what we need to stop doing is we need to stop trying to identify what they are. Let's agree 10 of them and let's put them into curriculum because they're not there.
That's a great point, Charlie. And I shared with you yesterday, there's a new report from Deloitte Access in Australia, and they've identified that the soft skill intensive occupations by 2030 will be 63% of occupations. And I agree with you. I'm now thinking instead of soft skills or even power skills, because I think that's too far to the right, I think it's something around growth skills, right? It's around growth, because looking again at the Deloitte thing, they list the main ones as emotional judgment, teamwork, communication, professional ethics, And they've also demonstrated through a diagram that if you follow the diagrams, it all ends up in business success. So it's all about their growth skills, right? And I guess my question is, we all know that these are necessary. So why are the authorities, whether it's training or government, universities, business schools, whoever, still focusing on the hard skills and not looking at this stuff? Is it because there's no universally acknowledged definition of what a soft skill is, and so it's everybody's avoiding it, this stuff? Why do you think it's suboptimized still?
Yeah, it's and that's again, Simon, a really, really good question. And I suppose when we talk about the authorities, I suppose we have to question, well, who are the authorities? Are we not an authority? You know, if we're private consultants, we're part of that authority as well. We're also parents. That's authority. And I think the conversation is starting. I would be very hopeful of that. There's no doubt the conversation has started, and it's gathering pace. I don't think this had the same level of intensity as a conversation last year before COVID. I think this whole thing around human skills and soft skills, whatever it is, I think it's gaining momentum, and it has to, because the anomaly is absolutely huge. It's the most gaping hole that I've seen in my history of work. That here we are. The industry is crying out for something that the students don't have, and we are not giving it to them. So even in that statement, there's so much work to be done.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a 3-year research. I think the evidence is there. I think the modules need to be put together. They need to either be accredited, or there's no need for accreditation, and they need to be put into the curriculum, because if you send a plumber out with 95% technical skills and maybe only exposure at best to 5% human skills, you're not preparing him for the future of work. The future is tomorrow.
Two things that are coming up when you're talking about that as well is history. And history has a lot to do with it. And we should be learning from history. There was a problem in this country when you talk about plumbing. So let's look at the apprenticeship. That there was a decline in apprentices who were coming through because everyone was pushing them on IT or web development and everything. And then this was the focus. So we had a drop on it. Now looking at today, there's an object to get, say, over 2,000 apprenticeships going at the moment. And the government have said, oh, we've got all these filled. But if you drill down into these apprenticeships, they're for Google, they're for Amazon, they're for all these large big tech companies, but there's not the apprentices for Joe Soap down the road who's the mechanic or the electrical guy or the plumber guy. What I'm trying to get at is we should be learning from our history to push these apprentices through and bolting on this leadership, because we can talk about leadership, but there's really bad leadership and there's really good leadership as well. And that trickles down from government right down into that small business that needs to keep the lights on to pay the mortgage and put food on the table.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And very, very valid point in terms of apprenticeships, in terms of, and again, it's not the students. I would put the blame of that totally at the feet of the parents. The expectation that we want Johnny to go to DCU or UCD or Trinity as opposed to an apprenticeship for plumbing, but very, very noble careers with great growth and potential in them.
Probably earning more money than us.
Well, without that, and employing hundreds of people. If you take the construction industry, one of the biggest employers in Ireland. But if we look at the statistics, the stats don't lie. We are sending 85% of students from second level into third level, only to watch 25% of them drop out. That's been the statistic consistently for the last 15 years. So it's got up to the highest rate in Europe, and we celebrated that rather than looked at it as a threat. The model economy is the Swiss model. The Swiss model sends 16%, 1/6 of its second level to third level at the age of 18. That's not to say they don't progress later on. 54% go into apprenticeships across all of the areas. So the areas you spoke about, yes, into IT and tech, there, but it's also in the construction and the other areas. And then later on, you can progress from that apprenticeship into third level, so as you can go on to a master in the thirties for. Our system is just 2 points driven. It's based on you being able to remember everything you learned in 5 years when you exam before. I'm highly critical of that situation. Because again, that would not develop anybody too much. And it's not just, we're just looking to develop memory skills. Some people can do that, others not for.
Charlie, it's interesting. When I first arrived in Ireland from the UK 21 years ago, I remember one of the first things I heard on the radio was exactly this conversation. The leaving cert system is not fit for purpose, that the world is moving more to, open, the kind of the Finnish or the Norwegian or New Zealand models of problem solving rather than rote learning. So why 21 years later is it exactly the same?
And you're absolutely right. And very, very timely, because Simon Haigh only yesterday has come out controversially and said leaving cert is not fit for purpose. It needs to be shipping up and which it has. And it's one of these things that when things are going well, we cannot change. Then when things are not going well, we've had both, we cannot change. So we haven't looked at it, we've looked at it, we've done research after research, made report after report, we haven't executed on it. So that thing, that said, vision without execution is hallucination, which is exactly what we've been doing. We've had the vision, we've been talking about it, we've not acted on it. So
what about the leadership?
Well, it does come out to leadership, but then what is the deficit? Where is leadership going to go? It's not. Is leadership a third acceptable? No. Is leadership acceptable at third level? Of course. So unless you study leadership, unless you do a master in leadership, you're not going to be exposed to a module of leadership if you're doing something you're not doing sports psychology. So we must include these items in the curriculum that the employers are saying there are gaps in. It's as simple as that. If it's as simple as that, that's what we should be executing.
So, Simon, what would you define as good leadership?
For me, good leadership, you're only a good leader if you have followers. Right? So there's no such thing as a leader without followers. So for me, I suppose it's 4 or 5 aspects. Calmness, compassion, and courage are important. Honesty as much as you can be from a corporate perspective. Influencing, right? Influencing is different to persuasion. Persuasion, there's negative undertones. To be a good leader, there needs to be something about you that a good, honest, ethical, kind of a magnetism that draws people along the journey. That for me is what leadership's about. And some people, it's instinctual in some people, but you have to learn this stuff. You have to, and awareness is another key part of it as well. So influencing and awareness are critically good.
Strong values, what you're saying is strong values. I think the last 2 years has shown us that leaders pure leaders, will have to stand up and lead the way, because you will always have leaders. You, as you say, Sam, you will always have followers, and you'll always have people who are shy or nervous. It's natural selection, you could say. And I think if someone is a leader or feel they are a leader, it's time now. In a world of chaos, let's not deny this. The world is in chaos. It's in madness. That people are looking for people that are calm, people that are logically thinking, and able to make a decision without fear. That's what I feel it is. And it's those strong values of ethics, truthful. It's about understanding, compassion. We speak about this a lot, Simon. It's compassion, empathy.
Yeah.
Charlie, I was shocked. I have friends in the States who are teaching courses on empathy. And I was going to go, and they said the reason why they're teaching them is because the kids that are coming up through the system don't know what empathy is. And he says that they're living in a 2D world. And I said, what do you mean? Video games, 2D world, they're playing these all the time. They're not living in the 3D world. And he says, we have to teach them what empathy is, which is crazy. Is that what we're doing here now? Are we teaching people to be better?
Yeah, and look at empathy has to be a subject. It has to be in a curriculum because, again, the natural world of a Gen Z or a millennial does not expose them to that to the level that it did in the past. That's not their fault, by the way. That's just the way society is. So these things like empathy or emotional intelligence, they have to be trained in. They have to be trained in. There has to be a module. They need to at least be aware of what they are. Yeah. And then, if they are to improve at them, they have to then be able to have the skills and the knowledge to improve and to become better people. This is not about making better salespeople or better IT technicians. It's about developing a better person.
Sponsored by the Dunleary Rattown Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
I read something recently, which really pricked my consciousness, and it was something online that somebody posted: be good to everybody, but if you can't be good, at least don't cause harm to other people, right? And that sums it up. Nobody ever taught me that at school. If one of my teachers, I went to a Catholic school in England, if one of the nuns had told me that, I'd like to think that would have sat in my head, right? And that would have sat in the neurons in my head, and it would have influenced the way I operated in life. But nobody taught me that. I was taught what happened in the Bible, and I was taught about how chemicals interact. And so that at the grassroots level, I think that sort of stuff should be taught in schools. Be good to everybody, and if you can't be good, don't do harm, right? That is the fundamental of interaction and empathy and ethics. It's as simple as that. Why can't we just break this down and start teaching this in school?
And it's also the basis of customer service. So, if we look at customer service starts internal in any organization. It's about treating the people within the organization with respect first and foremost. It's 37 years since Branson said customers are not first, and people thought he was crazy. And he went on to explain that your staff are first. You look after your staff will inevitably look after your customers will return. So, those things of kindness and care and compassion and knowing, things like respecting that, diversity, somebody does something in a different way or somebody looks different from me. They bring something to the team that I don't, but I bring something to the team that they don't. And having that mutual respect. And customer service starts, without question, the research is overwhelming. The customer service success stories are those companies who treat each other well internally. The external customer is just getting a replication of what's happening deep under the surface. So 7/8 of it are below the surface. What you're seeing in terms of good customer service is just the peak. And then sales is an inevitable outcome of this. So we talk about soft skills and customer service as if it was fluffy, nice to have, but it's the bottom line of sales. Sales is an outcome. I mean, I shy away from sales training because I don't think you can train sales. I think you can train the things that create sales. Sales is the outcome of the other things. Those other things are the soft skills, things like kindness, things like emotion. And these are things we're getting more comfortable speaking about. If you got a group of guys 20 years ago when you started talking about kindness and, emotions and experience, you would lose the room. But
Charlie, is Ireland Inc., maybe bring it back to customer service, is Ireland Inc. good at customer service compared to other jurisdictions, or is it better than some? Is it not as good as some, generally speaking?
Okay, hopefully this doesn't go outside the country. If it does, we're all in for it. No, we're not. We're not better than other countries. And we need to move away from that myth that we are. We would like to believe we are. There was a time we possibly were. Are we better metrically? If the measurement is against the States, against the United Kingdom, other parts, we're not better, we're not much worse. Okay? But could we be better? Yes, I do believe we can. And I think that in many ways, we're the athlete that hasn't been to the gym and hasn't been working out for a couple of years. We forgot what we're about. Look at our skills. We've gone IT digital crazy. and we haven't looked at the skills that we have an abundance of. Those human skills are not being exercised, they're not being trained on. So the answer to your question, there is no evidence that I have seen that Ireland is better than other countries at customer service. In fact, the evidence that is most accurate is the CEXI report, created in Dublin, that shows America and the UK to be better than us at customer experience. Now, that report is not a popular report, believe me, in the country, but it's a real report. The answer, part B of that, could we be better? Yes, we could. We could be world leaders at this. We could be world leaders at customer experience. And imagine how important that would be. We're already the best in Europe at IT and digital skills. Let's match the human skills alongside that. Then we've got a world power.
Céimí de fáilte, that's where we believe we are, but we're not. And I think what's happened with the industry and with a lot of people, it's that, self-gratification, that instant gratification. We want everything. And, I think IT and artificial intelligence and everything is driven that way. Yeah, I think, the three of us are of a world of Wall Street. The movie when Wall Street, was to eat everybody and come rich. And here we are, we grew up in that sort of era. And here we are talking about total opposite of what that the 80s meant. Yeah. I was speaking to someone the other day and how bad Ireland was at that stage. We can all recall hyperinflation, hanging on for everything. And what brought us out of that and gave us hope as a country then, believe it or not, and lifted the spirits was Italia 90. And that brought the nation together. That was the beginning of it. And maybe what's happened now with COVID and lockdown, and there is a divide, but maybe there's somewhere that we can all meet in the middle and start thriving again, being that beacon of light in the world of madness.
Ireland is, I think it's the fourth most intangible economy in the world, in terms of intellectual property. Most of the, big corporates are based here, and there's a lot of brand management out of Ireland. Wouldn't it be cool if Ireland in 10 years' time, through the work that the likes of you, Charlie, do, could be referred to as the soft or the growth skills capital of the world? Imagine that, the greatest customer experience. Imagine that.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. And look at, it's easy to be wise in hindsight, but the Apples and the Googles, they chose Ireland for various reasons, some of them controversial. We don't need to go into that. They created jobs, but where were the jobs? The jobs were in IT and digital. So what did the education system do? It prepared for that onslaught of jobs. So we've got the balance wrong, let's be honest. And if you go into Google and you go into Apple and you ask them where are the gaps in skills, they'll say not in digital and IT, it's in human skills. We have that information. So what if it's not, it shouldn't be what if, it should be let's now add in the human skills, the soft skills, the things that we are naturally good at. Let's get that into the training, the education system, and let's match that, and let's become world leaders at both the IT and the human skills. Remember, Steve Jobs had most to gain from the onslaught of IT, and he often was quoted the word of warning, IT is not here to replace the human touch, it's here to enhance it. But we've stepped past that mark
we've crossed
too
that.
often.
We're talking about leadership. What's your thoughts then on this whole cancel culture as well? That that is seeping in. Have you given much thought, both of you? If someone disagrees with a company's point of view or people don't like it, they basically just cancel it out, and it's the cancel culture. Is they don't want to do anything with the company again, and I'm looking at it and I'm finding that it's an easy way out. Instead of having that conversation or that leadership, it's instantly, speak to the hand. Seen it in large organizations around the world. And
I think a bit of it comes out of this whole instant gratification social media world where, instant results are wanted. And also, the confusion between fake news and real news, and so I think in a lot of people's heads they mush it all up and they think, right, well, I'm not going to engage. I'm just going to dismiss if I don't like it. If it doesn't suit me right now, that's my sense, Charlie. I don't know where. I haven't thought about it deeper, but I think that's my feeling about it. There's a confluence of the instant gratification and, well, it's all too confusing, so it's just easier to cancel kind of culture.
Yeah, look, there's two things come up there when you ask that, Joe, and one that I've been looking at, recently is digital literacy, and it's going to be a problem. And digital literacy is just that young people are going to find it very, very difficult, and they're finding it difficult to differentiate between real and imaginary.
Yeah,
because the digital doesn't. So fake news, real news, we're buying both. Kids are buying both, and the other thing is there as well is that there's a lot of information that is not to do with our experience of that experience. So it's to do with what somebody else said about it, or what the social media said about it. The problem with the cancellation, we still have a culture that 74% of people who are unhappy with a service or a product simply walk away. We don't complain.
Only
1 in 4 people complain. I'm one of the 74%. If I'm unhappy, I just can't be bothered with the hassle. I just won't go back there. And there's a lot of work to be done in that area. What we need to be doing, in the words of Disney, we need to be extracting the complaint. We need more complaints, strangely enough.
I think what the problem is with most companies, like if I'm, say, consulting with a company and we first go, let's go out and ask, why the people came to you originally, why are they still with you, and how can you improve your service? There are 3 questions that we ask. And I know a lot of people are fearful of question number 3, even though it's going to help their business and grow the business, because they're fearful that if they ask this question, they'll get negative feedback and it'll hurt their feelings. But it's actually a strength building question to ask. That's where we need to go. We need to be able to say, I'm going to get some flack here, but I'm going to take it, I'm going to use it, and I'm going to work on it to grow the business.
Joe, I heard something this morning. That the UK scientist Brian Cox, he's a kind of a bit of a cool dude. And he said something this morning, and I'd never heard. He said, I'm interested in ideas. Of course I am. But I'm more interested in the gap between 2 ideas. And when you think about that, I just think we need to think more deeply about that gap between ideas. Mm-hmm. And as you said, Joe, question things more. I think that was genius when he said that.
Yeah. It is. We're all geniuses. The one thing that I've sort of picked up from today is leadership. Another thing like inclusion and diversity. Leadership, I've just taken it for granted because of my education and bringing up as well. But there's definitely an industry there which I never really thought that people were missing. Like empathy when I was speaking to my colleague in America as well. So it's definitely something to work on.
Yeah.
Charlie, before we go, what advice would you say to a business owner now who's coming out of lockdown and hopefully opening up and has their staff and, they've been helping those staff over a period of time? What sort of advice would you give them coming into the last 6 months of the year?
I would say go deep rather than go big. I would say look inside, look at the organization, look at the staff. Have we got the basis to move forward here? Is there good culture? Have your culture measured, which you can do. There are tools to measure the company culture. A lot of people are afraid to use that. And if you have it right internally and you work at the organization, you work at the team, and that could be a team of 4 or 5. That could be a cafe with 4 people in it. It's working at that, working at the internal customer service, working at the culture. And from that, everything else flows out. So you're going to get your innovation, you're going to get your ideas because it's a safe place to fail. It's a safe place to, speak about something that you have an idea of that can improve. And it's from the internal that the external will improve. Looking at it big without getting it right deep is the mistake that too many make. So that would be the guidance, I suppose, that I would give, and we do give as a company. That's what we look at, and that's why we're different, I suppose, from other customer service programs. Is our belief is that it starts internally.
I think that's it. Charlie, if someone wants to reach out to you, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, well, Customer Service Excellence Ireland, if you type it in, you'll catch up with us there. Or strangely enough, CXEI, which is Customer Experience Excellence Ireland. CXEI will take you right on to our website, which is just opened this week, a new one. Or myself, Charlie Boyle on LinkedIn, which I'm probably most active on. So yeah, if you're on LinkedIn, Charlie Boyle on LinkedIn, and have a chat there and see what's going on. Keep the conversations going, Joe.
Yeah, it's important to keep the conversations going. That's what it is.
Sponsored by the Dunleary Rattown Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
Simon, your thoughts for today?
Just wrapping up, I interviewed an American called Ted Rubin who created this concept, return on relationships. Amazing guy. And he talks about, and I think this summarizes this chat, he says, people buy from people and brands they trust. They trust people and brands they like, and they like people and brands they can connect with. So trust, likability, and connection. And that's all soft or power or growth skills.
Yeah, it's my advice when I was 18 getting into sales was from the guy who was running the business at the time, Barry Gannon, and he said to me, "You like people, they like you. If they like you, they'll buy off you." That has resonated with me all my life, and it's just be kind to people, treat them the way you want to be treated, and see where it goes on it. See where it goes.
Yeah.
Folks, if you want to sort of connect with myself and Simon and not miss a show, we've created our own little website, which is Business Eye Advisory, and if you click on there, you won't miss a show, and we're going to be producing other goodies, and also click, share, and make a comment as well. But that grows the show online as well. So until next week, from myself and Simon, we'd like to say, well, thanks for listening. You have a super weekend. And Charlie, thanks for coming on today.